I am going to just get started, just in the interest of time. And the most important thing that we want to get out of these office hours are that we really want you guys to ask questions and, be engaged. We want to learn, more about what you want from us. We have a roadmap that we're going to share as well. So with that said, I'm going to share my screen, and we want to start off with just by going through some basics. We want to make sure that everyone knows how to use the application. And I'm going to start there, and then we'll hand it over to Chris, who's still having some technical difficulties, and he's going to jump into some other things around OneDrive SharePoint and also our roadmap, and then we'll open it up for the Q&A session. So first, I just like to talk a little bit about some things that are important for our app to work as smoothly as possible. And the first thing is that we have this bundle that should be installed within NetSuite. And this bundle is really important because it's going to give for the best end user experience for you guys. It's going to make our app a lot faster. And it's a little hard to see on my screen, but on the bottom, there is a version number. And right next to that version number, there's this tiny little yellow lightning bolt. And that's how you can tell that our app is actually connected to that bundle. And again, it's not required to have the bundle, but it's certainly recommended, because when I click suggest related records, our app does a search. And as you can see, that went pretty quickly. And that's because of the bundle that we have, that I have installed here. If you don't see that lightning bolt and your admin tells you that you actually do have that bundle, let us know and we'll troubleshoot it, and we'll make it, make sure that little lightning bolt appears there. But that is one thing that's definitely recommended. The next thing I want to talk about is something that I find very useful, and I find a lot of customers don't know about it. And that is this concept of roll-up emails to the parent records. So anytime with CloudExtend that you save an email to a child record, the email is actually going to automatically roll up to the parent record for you without you actually having to check it off. And here is a list of some of those child records that happens with. So for example, if I save an email to a contact record with CloudExtend, I actually don't need to go ahead and then search for the customer record to attach it to as well, or check off that customer record. It's going to do that for me in the background, and it's going to save that email to both places. And the reason why that's really important is because, I know myself, a lot of times I'm looking at the parent record, and I want to see all the conversations related to the different contacts in NetSuite. So this is really great, and you can see here this list. This applies to cash sales, to estimates, invoices, jobs, etc. So this is really, really cool to have that roll up there. So let me head back over to Outlook really quickly, and a couple other things that I want to talk about. The first is just some best practices when you're composing an email or replying to an email, and you want to get that email saved to NetSuite. First and foremost, just like in the inbox mode, I suggest pinning the application just so that it will stay on the screen at all times. And from there, the next thing is I recommend this workflow here, and that is to fully type out your email before doing anything with CloudExtend on the right-hand side, and I'll explain why that's important in a second. So if I come here, I type out my email, I now come over, I decide where I want to save this email to, I check off the records that I want to save it to, and then, as it says here, remember to attach that email before sending, click attach, and then hit send. The reason why I mentioned to kind of do that all in one swoop is because once you attach this email, and if you add more information here in the email, well, you've already attached that. At this point, you're just simply sending it, and this additional information that you type is not going to be saved in NetSuite. And by the way, this is actually, ideally, we want to be able to send the email first and then save it, but it's actually a security concern if we were to do it that way. So without getting too technical, we at least obviously wanted you guys to have the ability to send and attach emails in this mode. So we do it this way so that we don't run into those security issues. Another thing I want to mention in terms of composing an email is if you are attaching files here, you'll notice there's no way to actually save the file attachments in compose or reply mode. So in that case, I would recommend not even using the attach in this mode, but instead send your email and then go to your sent folder and then attach it. And at that point, you can include those attachments as well. So just some little tips there in compose or reply mode that may be beneficial to you guys. Hey, Chris, I noticed you joined. I let everyone know our technical difficulties with Zoom, so I'm glad you were able to hop on.
No worries. Thank you.
Yep. So next up, let's see. There's a few common reasons why you may not find records here when you do a search. The first thing I noticed that customers do by accident is actually log into a Sandbox account. And if you're in a Sandbox account, it might not be pulling back those same records that would be pulling back if you were in a production account. We've actually changed the app to make it very clear that you're in a Sandbox account. I think there's like a huge thing up here now that says you're working in a Sandbox account, and also down here so that you can see that. But that's one of the most common reasons I find that you're not finding records, is because you're actually logged into the wrong instance in NetSuite. So just keep that in mind. And then let's see. One other tip I like to give is, with our app, there's two different ways of searching for records. You can do the auto fetch, which is the suggest button here, or you can do a manual search. And I'm going to click the suggest button here. And let's say in this case here, I wanted to save this email to a contact, but I also wanted to save it to another record. And there may be times where other records that you are looking for are not pulled back here, just because we search in NetSuite by the email addresses. So in this case, if I wanted to save this email to the contact and another record, I would use this Add More Records button down here, do a manual search, find the record that I want to attach to, check it off and hit done, and then I'm coming back to my main screen here. You'll notice contact is checked, and you'll notice opportunities checked, and then I hit attach, and it will save to those two records. Now, let me just give one other scenario when you actually wouldn't want to use the Add More Records button. So let's say I came here and I click Suggest, and it didn't find any of the records that I want to attach to. I don't want to attach it to this contact, this opportunity, or this support case. In this case, I would actually want to come up here and use this magnifying glass, because from here, I can search and I can actually attach directly from the screen. So basically, it just saves a click. So just keep that in mind when you're attaching your emails to these different records, that you have different ways of doing things to make it just a little bit faster based on what records you're actually going to save your emails to. So those are a couple tips there, guys. I know I went through that pretty quickly just because I wanted to make sure we had enough time for questions. So I'm going to hand it over to Chris, and I think Chris is going to share some info and some scenarios on using OneDrive and SharePoint, and then we'll talk a little bit about roadmap and open it up for QA.
Okay, great. Thanks, Justine. So I'm sharing my screen here. We should be looking at a customer record called Contoso. Just someone give me a shout out if that's not what you're seeing. And I want to show how we can integrate with SharePoint. So over in my SharePoint site, I've got a folder called Customers, and within Customers, I've got a customer called Contoso. And I've got a customer in NetSuite also called Contoso. And what I want to do now is be able to have every file that ever gets dropped into that SharePoint customer folder show up inside NetSuite without it costing me any extra money for my NetSuite subscription. So the first thing I'm going to do here is click Attach from OneDrive. And when you see OneDrive, just think OneDrive or SharePoint. They're synonymous as far as we're concerned. So this is going to open up my SharePoint site. And then from here, I can come in and choose the one that I want. I probably have way too many. I'll come into Customers. And in this case, I want to associate the Contoso folder with this NetSuite record. And now, when I open this, I can see all the files that are stored inside of this Contoso folder. So you're basically seeing a mirrored copy inside of NetSuite, but it's not taking up any storage space whatsoever. So you can see there's like a 42 megabyte file in here that costs next to nothing on SharePoint, and it's costing $0 in NetSuite here. So I can take other files and I can drag them over here. So let me just open up my Finder and just grab any file here. So here's another file that I'm going to bring over, and I'm just dragging and dropping this into my SharePoint site. So this says screenshot, and if I come back over to NetSuite, I think I actually have to refresh the record. So I'm just going to go ahead and refresh this entire screen one time. And then come back to the CloudExtend Files tab. And now when I open Contoso, I will see that screenshot down here as well. And I can click over here and I can open it if I want to. And for example, here's like a PDF file that happens to sit out here. So this is going to open up right here inside of my internet browser. So that's a way to save some money on storage space. You can create a separate folder, and it's a one-time process associated with a customer record. Maybe you've got a project going on, you want to create that folder and associate it with a project record. The real beauty of this, though, is that people from outside of the organization that you give access to those SharePoint or OneDrive for Business folders to can add files and even subfolders to those documents without having to have NetSuite access. And then if we'll say a project, for an example, that project manager would come into NetSuite and they could see everything that they needed to right here in NetSuite, which is really the right place to see that information. So you don't need to give NetSuite access out to anyone. They can still interact with that OneDrive or SharePoint for Business folder. Now, the other thing I want to show is something inside of my Outlook. So here I've got two files sitting out here as attachments. Normally, Justine showed the process where you might search for a record or suggest a related record, and you can attach the email, and then you can attach the file. Now, that's going to take up storage space. So what I'm suggesting, if storage space is really critical for you, or let's say maybe you have got a limit. Maybe you say anything over 10 megabytes, which by the way is the max that NetSuite allows for web services to attach anyway. So you might want to say if it's a larger file, then you always want to store that file on the CloudExtend Files tab. Anything smaller, maybe it's okay to put in the file cabinet. Come up with whatever works for you. But if you do want to use your SharePoint storage from an email itself here, I'm going to go ahead and click this drop-down box. I'm going to choose Save As. And because I've enabled the desktop sync for my SharePoint, I can come right up here and I can go to my customers folders, and then I can choose Contoso, and I can save this right here. It looks like I already have one called the same thing, so this might put, it's actually going to have me replace it. So I can go ahead and click on Save. And let's go ahead and add this one here too, because I think this might have a different name. Yeah, that's called low res. So let's go ahead and save that. I remembered where I last saved it. So I'll go ahead and save it here. And then I can come back over to NetSuite. I can refresh this screen. And I can get the CloudExtend files. And I can see that I've added those folders in here. So one of these is the low resolution. The other is the high resolution. So we do have, by the way, you can kind of see here something that we do have a fix coming soon for. You can't really see the full file name here, and there's plenty of room to add that in there. So you should see that fix coming shortly. So that was one of the things that I wanted to cover on my tips. I do also want to show something that I learned from a customer in the Netherlands about 2 months ago. Something called, most of you probably know that you can view a customer dashboard by clicking on View Dashboard. So that wasn't new to me, but I've been a NetSuite user since 1999, and this piece is actually new to me. So I did not know that you could come in here and personalize this and add something called a timeline. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to come in and just going to drag in a timeline. This is just a tip. It's completely unrelated or somewhat unrelated to our application. But in here, now you can put events, phone calls, campaign responses, everything you see here in reverse chronological order. So if you wanted to see all the emails that came in, and maybe you don't want to see campaign responses, phone calls, this is really just great if you're an account exec or if you're someone that's working in an organization and you want to be able to just quickly get a glance at what the most recent really important communications are, and communications in this case being events, phone calls, etc. This is a place to do it. Otherwise, you'd be in that customer record. Let's go back to the record, and you'd have to switch between the messages tab to see all of the messages. So you have to switch, you have to look here, and then if you want to go to the activities, you'd have to come over to the activities tab, and then here you'd see events, you might see the phone calls, then you have to go over to transactions to see all the quotes or the sales orders, etc. So that's one place you can get a real holistic view. And then the last tip that I wanted to give, well, the second to last tip, because I want to talk about how you can get a peek at our roadmap as well. We have a release coming out in July. And in that release, this is something that is not available right now. So you could try this now, you can build it, but you'll get zeros in the results. You'll be able to start showing in a saved search, which now you can turn into a KPI. And I'm going to get a link to our help article on this in a second. You'll be able to show the total emails attached by CloudExtend. And then when you drill down, you'll actually be able to see who they were attached by. So in this case, you could see Justine had attached 1 and I had attached 5 in that particular period. So it's really just a save search, and all we're doing is writing to, let me give you some background. So NetSuite doesn't allow for that messages record to be customized. So what we've done, instead of adding a custom field to say like who attached the email, et cetera, we're writing some data to the external ID field, which is available to us. And then we're building a save search off that external ID field. So let me go ahead and just do a quick find. And this is a good segue into our support center as well. So I'm just going to type in here, metrics. All right, let's try metrics. Good, thanks. Okay, good. So this article here will give you the formulas that we use to build this. So this really, it's not super complicated. It really kind of just basically walks you through the whole thing. So this is an article. Just come to support.cloudextend.io and search for the, just search for metrics, right? Okay, then the other thing I'm going to show is our roadmap. So you can also come to our support site right here at the top. When you drill down into, you're going to first land here, but then you can just drill down into Outlook. And then from here, you can click on the roadmap. And here we give you a description of what the roadmap is going to, what the different sections of the roadmap are going to tell you. And then you can view it right here. So there's 4 sections. So this section, customer ideas, customer submitted ideas up for vote, are ideas that customers have submitted. We haven't yet vetted them to move them up to this next category, which is shortlisted ideas under consideration. So we meet as a team once a month and we review all the customer submitted ideas. And when we think that there's enough behind them, we'll put them over here. And then our engineers will start conversations and figuring out when they can move these onto the roadmap. And then once they're under development, we actually put them here so that you guys have somewhat of an idea as to what's coming in an upcoming release. So if something's here, there's no guarantee it's happening in the next month or so, but you can rest assured that these are things that we're actively working on. So you might see one before another. For example, I know we've got, I think, 5 or 6 more record types that are being supported in a release that's coming out in July. So that's one example. And then here we're going to add in our release notes. So we had a whole bunch of historical release notes. This portal we built about a month and a half, 2 months ago. So that's why I don't think that we're going to kind of try and backload everything that we've done into here. Okay, let's see. Justine, because I joined late, I'm not sure if you guys had a chance to share the office hours screen. I don't think so. Good. So let's see. I just saw your Slack message. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys that are on this call all know who we are. So Justine's your account exec on the top left. Joseph Yeager is your customer success manager. So he's your primary point of contact as an existing customer. Kevin Ha, bottom right, manages our support team. And then I'm on the bottom left. And Kevin also is our solution consultant. So he'll help with some thorny use cases, usually for our CloudExtend Excel for NetSuite integration, which is a little less out of the box than our other integrations. And I think one of the next things we wanted to do was make sure that you guys knew how to ask questions. And that's really super important. There is a Q&A chat icon at the bottom of your Zoom chat window. So please make this interactive. And if you have questions, go ahead and type them in right now. Would someone mind just kind of reading me some of the questions that are sitting out there now?
Yeah, sure. I'll go ahead and do that, Chris. So there was one question around calendar events. Can you attach calendar events to NetSuite records also?
Yes, you can definitely attach calendar events to NetSuite records. Let me just get back to my Outlook, and I will show that kind of real quickly. Okay, right, here I am here. So I've got my Outlook integration, and I'll just go ahead and create an event for tomorrow. Give it a name, test, and you can go ahead and click on the CloudExtend icon, search for the record that you want to attach it to, and as I mentioned, there's a few more record types coming in July, but if I wanted to attach this event to, say, the customer record that lives out there called Amazon, I could go ahead and do that by clicking on attach right here.
Awesome. Perfect. And we have another question around custom fields. Are custom fields going to be supported for contact creation?
Yes, that is one of the long-standing enhancement requests that we have out there. So first iteration, we expect to have delivered this quarter. So within the third quarter, again, take that with a grain of salt. That is our plan right now. And the first iteration is going to require that each user go ahead and customize the fields. So there won't be really this admin level setting that if you have 50 people in your company, all 50 users would have to customize that contact record and expose the individual custom fields that they want to see. I know the ideal way would be for an admin to essentially design a form that users using CloudExtend would see. But we're not there yet. This will be our first cut at it. There'll be more improvements along the way.
Awesome, Chris. Okay. Another, I guess not question, but comment was, I saw that Justine created a best practices article, and I found that very useful. Thank you for that. I did create a best practice guide, and this is something that I've compiled over the past few months. I've been working on the CloudExtend. Actually, we've all here been working on the CloudExtend team a long time, and I talk to customers day in and day out, and I find there's certain things that customers do who are really successful with CloudExtend. So I put this best practice guide together just really based off all of these different conversations with all of these different customers, and I'm glad that you found it useful, and we'll share it in the follow-up also.
Awesome, great. Yeah, this is a really useful article. I actually learned something from this. Thanks, Justine.
You're welcome, Chris.
This, by the way, was my favorite part and something that we really try and reiterate as often as possible, which is avoid email clutter at all costs. As I mentioned, we have a Gmail integration as well. I mentioned this in the last office hours we had for Gmail as well. It's, to me, like the easiest thing for us to build would be something that would just go through your Outlook inbox and then just stuff everything into NetSuite. Look for a matching contact and then put it there. But after probably a month or 2 months of time, with all the users in your company, just imagine how cluttered NetSuite emails are going to be. So our view is that it really should be a place that anything that is important really goes. So you shouldn't shove everything there, otherwise it's going to be useless, kind of like looking at your inbox without filters, etc. So please just make sure that you don't just shove everything in there. Use caution and put in there what you think is important. Which reminds me, I did have one other tip that I thought of at the last second, and I'm going to write an article on this as well. So what I've done is created a shared folder, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. But in the shared folder, now I can just go ahead and click on that. Not a shared folder, sorry, a search folder. And I can, at a glance, see every email that I've ever attached to NetSuite. So the way I've done that is you just come up here to folder, and then you click new search folder. And looks like Outlook is having a little, it will take a second. This happened when I built this before as well. But in any event, once this comes up, you want to look for categorized email, and then you want to choose an email in a particular category. So in this case, let's just say I'm going to choose sync in progress, because this will give me something else. And if I want to see all the emails that have a sync in progress, I can click here. If I want to see anything with a category attached to NetSuite, I can click here. This is the prerequisite is that you do have the category feature enabled in CloudExtend, and that is that there's a category that's created here called attached to NetSuite. We do have an article on that as well, and I'll just show you kind of how easy it is to search for these. I will type category, and here's the article on how to make sure that you're able to use that category feature. And it's really handy because when you do use the category feature, you'll get this label attached to NetSuite that you can see here, as well as the category color as well. Okay, we've got a minute left. Any other questions out there?
So one comment, which is always asked on these, is your favorite animal a bear, Chris?
No, my favorite animal is not a bear.
Because you have lots of bears back there.
I do,
Brian
I
asked
do,
that.
I do. Thanks, Brian.
No other questions that I can see. Let me just check the chat. I didn't check the chat yet. Nope. I think we're good, which is good because we're right at the time of the end of the session. And again, apologies, guys. The Zoom went crazy. I had to reboot, and that's why we were late here. But I'm glad we have so many users joining. And if any questions come up, Chris, if you want to put that screen up where our pictures are so they can see our emails, that would be awesome.
Yep, got it. We'll close with this screen.
Perfect.
So you can see the email addresses there. Oh, you know, I think one last thing, I actually have it up here. So we also do have a YouTube channel with some tips and tricks here. We also have kind of a full playlist here, so you can see, you know, other than tips and tricks, you know, here's a demo. Here's how to manage your subscriptions if you're an admin. So lots of different things we've built videos for. So definitely think about subscribing to our YouTube channel as well. If you subscribe, you'll get an alert every time a new video is posted. Thanks again, everyone, for being such loyal customers and caring enough to join our office hours. Reach out anytime, and if not, feel free to join next month.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks,
you.
everyone.